A very good morning to all, and thank you for joining us for today's EFDP on National Education Policy and its special emphasis to innovation and entrepreneurship. I, Seema Vadhavan, take this opportunity to welcome you all on behalf of Geetarakan International Business School on this virtual platform. Gitarakan International Business School was established in year 2004. It is affiliated to Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University, Delhi, and approved by AICTE, Ministry of HRD, Government of India for technical courses, and Bar Council of India for law courses. The institute conducts various courses, namely MBA, MBA International Business, MCA, BBA, BBA LLB, and BA LLB. The institute is accredited as Category A by NAC and assessed as Category A+ by State Fee Regulatory Committee and rated highest grading A by Joint Inspection Committee of Government of NCT of Delhi and GGS IP University. The institute has been rated as Grade A by Academic Audit Cell of GGS IP University consecutively for past 7 years. GIBS has also been rated as number 2 twice consecutively by Times B School Survey 2019 and 2020. Education is fundamental for achieving full human potential and promoting national development. Indian education system, though one of the credible ones among developing nations, need to focus especially on entrepreneurial front. To keep the pace with the technological developments and bridge the gaps, the Government of India has replaced 34 years old National Policy on Education with National Education Policy of 2020. The new policy promises to make sweeping reforms in education and research. At the same time, it creates new possibilities for lifelong learning, besides making it industry-oriented with emphasis on entrepreneurship. GITS, in its perpetual pursuit to deliver learning and offer global exposure to where is very delighted to organize this EFTP on National Education Policy of 2020 with emphasis on innovation and entrepreneurship. And to discuss on this topic, we have with us Professor Furqan Qamar. Professor Furqan Qamar is a former Vice Chancellor of University of Rajasthan and the first Vice Chancellor of Central University of Himachal Pradesh. Sir is the former Secretary General AIU, that is Association of Indian Universities, where he played his key role of the Principal Executive Officer of the largest and one of the oldest networks of university. Sir has also been an advisor education in the Planning Commission of India and was responsible for many policy initiatives in higher education for the country. He has chaired and has been the member of large number of committees, working groups at the national and international level. After completing his tenure with AIU, he joined back the Center for Management Studies at Jamia Millia Islamia, Central University as a professor of management studies. Sir has keen interest in research related to public policy, planning, administration and financing for higher education and has published in various journals of repute. An outstanding scholar throughout, Sir has been through there, brings with him academic eminence, leadership qualities and exposure to the best global practice. And we are pleased to invite you today with us, Sir, today. I would now request you, please take over the session.
Thank you very much, Seemaji. I believe that I'm supposed to speak for about 30 minutes on the national education policy, and then there would be question answer session. I am delighted and happy to be sharing my understanding of the national education policy 2020 with the faculty members and the institution leaders who are participating in this program. The National Education Policy 2020 has been in public domain and under discussion for quite some time. And finally, it was in the end of July that the final version of the national education policy was approved by cabinet and has been uploaded on the website and is available for all of us to see, understand, and analyze its implications and get ready and be prepared for its implementation. As was mentioned in the introduction by Seema, that this national education policy is contemplating and envisioning major changes in the structure and in the component and content of higher education. For example, just to quickly summarize, the national education policy is talking about the changes in the duration of the undergraduate and the postgraduate programs. Under the new scheme of things, undergraduate programs could be of 4 years, but then there is a possibility that they could also continue to be of 3 years. But chances are that given the emphasis on a 4-year bachelor's degree, increasingly the number of institutions would be shifting to the 4-year undergraduate program. And I'll come to further detail on this dimension, that as to why was it considered necessary and what benefits can we hope to get out of this change in the duration of the program at the undergraduate level. Similarly, at the master's level, it is proposed that the master's level program would be of 1-year duration for those who have done 4 years of bachelor's degree, but will continue to be of 2 years duration for those who have done 3 years of undergraduate or bachelor's degree. The MPhil qualification has not found favor with the national education policy. And then there are some specifics about some professional programs like teachers education, etc. Now, let us try to see these things in a context and in the proper perspective, so that we could analyze in the context of a business school that what are its implications. The National Education Policy 2020 has taken the view that higher education in the present form is highly compartmentalized. There is a need to make higher education interdisciplinary. And therefore, based on this logic, and the National Education Policy also says that making higher education multidisciplinary and comprehensive and holistic is necessary for improving the quality of higher education. And the quality is defined in terms of the research output and in terms of the employability of the graduates, in terms of the innovation, in terms of the patent, and so many things. Now, all of you must be familiar that for quite some time, this issue has been discussed and deliberated. For example, the National Knowledge Commission, in its report in 2009, had also highlighted on some of these issues. Later on, Yashpal Committee had also talked about making higher education multidisciplinary. And now, benefiting from the discussion that had been held in this regard so far, the National Education Policy also says that we need to make education holistic and multidisciplinary. So not only at the higher education level, but also at the school level, they are talking about this holistic pattern. Now, let us reflect on this dimension, that why national education policy is giving so much importance to it, you will all see that presently all the research, all developments, all innovations, they are not coming as much from the core of a discipline. I think whatever could have been discovered, invented from the core of the discipline has already been done. Lately, we are seeing that whatever developments are happening, they are happening by intermingling of the disciplines. So it is the bioscientists and engineers, when they come together, there have been invention. When the people in the physics and the engineering, they have come together, there have been a number of new developments. Above all, you may have also noticed that any problems that we face, even as an individual, that problem cannot be solved. You cannot find a solution by the knowledge of a single discipline. It does require amalgamation and benefit from a wide variety of disciplines. And therefore, this interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity has been found critical to further development in the knowledge areas. Now, in India, our system of higher education has been somewhat rigid in terms of the structure and in terms of the content. So the national education policy wanting to break from that system, and they are saying that the students need to be exposed to a variety of choices and the disciplines and the knowledge, so that they become champions and flag bearer of this multidisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity. And in order to enable this, then the national education policy makes some further recommendation, which has implications for, say, standalone business institutions, or for small-sized universities, or for monodisciplinary universities. Say, for example, whatever benefit you see in making education multidisciplinary, and howsoever is the willingness and keenness of the institution to resort to multidisciplinary approach, it will not be possible unless the institution has a large number of departments, schools, centers within its campus. So it means a institute which is only an arts college, or a science college, or a commerce college, or a standalone institute which offers only business management education, may not be in a position to offer wide variety of choices to its students. And that is why the national education policy is recommending that all institutions will have to become multidisciplinary. They will have to have more than one, preferably many departments and branches of knowledge available on their campus, so that the intermingling of these could be made possible. The national education policy further realizes that this may not be possible for all institutions, and therefore it is making recommendations that there could be cluster of institutions, that several institutions of many different types. So, for example, some science colleges, some commerce colleges, some arts colleges, some management institutes, some teachers training colleges, they could be located separately, but they could work as part of a single structure in the form of a cluster, so that the student could take courses and the choices being offered by all of these institutions. So I think the critical point here is that making all institutions multidisciplinary, either institutions themselves become multidisciplinary or they network with other institutions in the immediate neighborhood so that people could be extended with this choice. The second thing which national education policy is highlighting and emphasizing, and rightly so, is that so far our approach to development of higher education has been that we know that higher education need to expand in order to accommodate more people. So that you saw that presently our gross enrollment ratio is about 27%, which is to be taken to 50% in say about 15 years of time. That will require our enrollment rate or rate of growth in enrollment to double. So we need to create capacity. Present approach has been that you can create capacity only by establishing new institutions. But national education policy recommends that new educational institutions may have to be established to mitigate regional variations or disparities that might exist, to provide access to certain geographical locations. But bulk of the expansion would come by increasing the capacity of the existing institutions. So they are talking about increasing the intake capacity of the existing institutions. It means two things. That number one, when you make these institutions multidisciplinary and you are adding more disciplines, so each discipline will have an intake capacity, and therefore the total size of the institution would grow up. Secondly, it also means that the small-sized institutions are often academically and economically non-viable. Meaning you cannot have quality teachers, you cannot have the critical mass of the infrastructure and the human resources, which is necessary for the institutions to become of quality. So enhancing the size of the institution for multidisciplinarity and for academic and economic viability would serve this purpose. So the education policy emphasizes on this dimension. Now, this is a challenge for many of an standalone institutions, particularly the teachers training institutions and the management schools. And therefore, every management school institute shall have to do a stock taking as to what additional branches which are allied and cognate and complementary and supplement to their existing business management degree that they would want to add. They will also have to take stock of their physical infrastructure. They will also have to take stock of the competition that they have. They may perhaps also have to take into account the kind of preferences which people may have for different programs of study. And taking all of these things together, they will have to be ready with their expansion plan. Because if you are not ready with that expansion plan, then in that case, you will either have to be part of the cluster, and the national education policy also talks about consolidation and the closure of the institutions. In fact, not in the education policy, but the previous draft national education policy of 2019, it was mentioned that the number of higher educational institutions in the country, which are presently about 55,000 colleges, standalone institutions, and universities all put together, will have to be consolidated into about 15 to 20,000 institutions in the country. Meaning they will have to merge, consolidate, close down if they are not able to meet the prescribed requirement of enhancing the size and becoming multidisciplinary. So there is a logic behind this argument. The second set of recommendations of the national education policy is that we also need to address a number of rigidities that exist in the higher education system. For example, if you examine and have a look at your own institutions, you will find that students must have completed a certain qualification in order to get degree, in order to get admission to a certain programs of studies. So you can't take admission in MSc Physics unless you have done BSc Physics. Second, once you have taken admission, there is a set curricula, there is a detailed courses listing, and students are required to take all the prescribed courses in order to be able to complete their qualification. Then there is a third rigidity, that there is a whole duration of the program, say bachelor's program of 3 years and master's program of 2 years, and unless a student completes all the 3 years or all the 5 years, the student gets nothing from the educational institutions and is declared either as a dropout or as a failure. Now, these are some of the major stumbling blocks in promoting quality and the flexibility in the higher education system. Earlier, though, we have been trying to bring in choice-based credit system, which allowed students to choose some courses based on their preference, their choices. Now the national education policy wants to go beyond. So they are in fact emphasizing on the choice-based courses, and choice-based courses in such a manner that students are given freedom, students are given liberty to choose courses from across all disciplines that exist in the university, and they make their own baskets. So it is going to enhance the scope and increase of the choice-based courses than it exists today. Not only that, the national education policy also talks about that today when people have become mobile, they change places because of their jobs, maybe because of their social conditions and because of their economic conditions. There are disruptions in their life. Maybe at that time they did not think about the kind of disruptions that we are experiencing today because of the corona. But even without corona, there are many kinds of disturbances that families face. And when families face these kind of difficulties, the young in the family who are in the school and college going age groups, they also experience difficulties in continuing their education. Let's take this extreme example of corona. Those who migrated from their workplace to their hometown, and if their children were studying where they were presently working, now the children have also migrated to their hometown. Now their education is in a disturbed state. There could be a variety of factors, natural, man-made, and a number of things. And therefore, the national education policy wanted, though we did not need a policy change, every institution was free to do this before, but now it has been made as part of the policy, that people should be given freedom to exit midterm. So say, for example, if somebody has taken admission to an MBA program and after completing 2 semesters, this person is not able to continue his education presently, either because of his choice, he got some jobs or she got some job, or maybe got married, had family responsibilities, or had to change locations. There could be a number of factors. Could not continue. Under the existing scheme of things, this person would be considered as a dropout. But education policy says that this person could be given, say, an advanced diploma. He leaves the university with the qualification if he has successfully completed 2 years of time. And then when the time permits, when his circumstances permit, there should be a possibility that this student can return back and complete the remaining part of his course program to complete and get the degree. So there is a multiple exit opportunity for people with qualification and a possibility to enter not only at the very first semester level, but also to enter at various entry points that are specified, and further details would be available maybe in the implementation strategies. So now, so far, the focus has been making institutions large-sized, making institutions multidisciplinary, making program of studies modular. Multiple entry and multiple exit means one master's qualification has been divided into 2 modules or 4 modules. One bachelor's degree has been divided into several modules, so making it modular. And therefore bringing in a kind of paradigm shift in the way people learn. What you may have earlier listened to as multiple pathways of learning or flexible pathways of learning or learning as your convenience. I think the education policy is trying to assimilate these ideas into its recommendations. Recall and remember that earlier the learning, in the most early times, the learning was based on what the teacher wanted their disciples to learn. So this Gurukul Parampara and Madrasa system, they all had this system that the teachers was the fountainhead of all knowledge. Then post-industrial revolution, we had mass kind of an education. So you assumed that all students are of a type, so they can be sitting in a class and a single teacher could be teaching all of these students, and all of these students would be able to learn with the same speed and at the same pace. There is no difference in the type of students, in their own attitude, in their own behavior. But now there has been increasing realization that no, this is not so. The learning does not have to take place in a mass mode. The learning can also take place in a kind of individual basis. So present system was designed on the basis of a common template, a common frame, a common time, a common location, where all students must come, gather. A teacher should teach them, they should gain knowledge. And if they succeed by passing the examination, then they will get the degree. On the other hand, now the contemporary approach is that the knowledge and information is available from a wide variety of sources. Students learn from teachers, but students also learn from peers. A student can also learn on their own. The teachers, rather than just feeding all the information, can become a facilitator. So these kinds of changes are happening. So this is called personalized learning. Anytime, any place, as per your convenience. So national education policy has also been influenced with this thought process. And therefore, it is suggesting, you must have seen, that students shall be free, or anyone can become a student, and anyone can be free to go on learning and accumulating credit, not only from a single university, from a broad spectrum of the institutions, and the credit that they accumulate would be deposited somewhere, and that somewhere has been named by the National Education Policy as National Academic Credit Bank. So like if you have your accounts in bank for your financial transactions, you can have your educational accounts open with this National Academic Credit Bank, and whatever qualification you earn through MOOCs, through online courses, various other ways, or sometimes the recognition of the prior learning, they all could be deposited. And there could be a possibility that a person could approach a degree awarding institutions with the request that I have accumulated these credits. You could evaluate these credits, and if you think that these credits are worth getting a bachelor's degree in a particular discipline, you please award me the discipline. So qualification recognition and qualification assessment would be part of this. I think since the focus of this webinar has been on innovation and entrepreneurship, from that point of view, these changes in the education policy are very, very critical and important. We are talking about entrepreneurship in the context of higher education, then we are talking about entrepreneurship based on innovation and research, based on new knowledge and new technology that has been developed by an educational institution, or by students, or by a group of students, by being in higher educational institutions. And as I mentioned before, that the possibility of such innovations, probability of such innovations, such research and development, such gain in technology would be far more when people try to combine knowledge of many disciplines to find solution to certain problems. So this flexibility would promote more innovation and more possibilities, new product developments, new process developments, and therefore the possibilities of innovation-led entrepreneurship would increase. Not only that, it will also make people more employable, because presently the employer need people with multiple skills. Employer need people who should be willing to go on learning throughout their knowledge, because the way the technology is developing, the existing knowledge becomes obsolete much more quickly than before, and therefore anybody who was useful on the basis of the previous knowledge and the skill sets becomes redundant. In order to save such people from redundancy, the person should be able, or should be enabled, to go on learning new skills. So from that point of view, the lifelong learnings and a number of other options have been given. So I think I'll stop here. I have not given a full summary or gist of the national education policy, because there is a lot more about the regulatory framework, the changes that it is talking about, the changes in the school structure, which is going to have implications for higher education. But if there would be questions, I would be willing to take those questions and try to answer them. But the document is available, and these documents can be read by anyone who is interested in knowing more about the changes that are being contemplated in the national education policy. Thank you very much. Over to you, Seema.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we have some questions coming in from the participants.
Sure.
And as we were talking about, entrepreneurship has been the part of the policy. There is one question coming. What are the guidelines about entrepreneurship given under NEPC?
I mean, you see, the policy document is never detailed roadmap or working document. So from that point of view, you would have some disappointments because the policy does not delineate about how would the entrepreneurship be developed, how would innovation be encouraged. But there is a mention of innovation and entrepreneurship at several places for making higher education relevant. And you may also be aware that the government has invited ideas from people from educational institutions, from universities about the implementation strategies. And it is not only the universities, but also the industry association, etc., which have been asked to provide their input. Further would emerge about this when the implementation plan comes. But what I would like to say at this stage is that this policy is also talking about autonomy of higher educational institutions, freedom to higher educational institutions to take their own decisions once they have an empowered board. So it means each institutions can think of their own strategies for promoting innovation and entrepreneurship. So they need not remain confined to the existing available methods and strategies that are available that we all know through the incubation center, through the research part, through the technology part, and so on. You can go beyond that. So this is the present situation, but you will get more details once there is an implementation out in public domain. Okay, over to you, Seema.
Yes, sir. Sir, talking about again the entrepreneurship part, sir further also wants to know that should entrepreneurship learning be started at the basic school level? Because currently we are talking about our graduate and postgraduate courses. So should this entrepreneurship learning be started at school level?
You see, entrepreneurship education has many connotations. So some people would argue that everyone, whether he or she wants to be entrepreneur or does not want to be entrepreneur, meaning a businessman, should know something about entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship is about new approach, it's about aptitude, it's about risk taking, it's about being generally familiar, it's about being street smarts. So yes, some input on entrepreneurship education is, I mean, we can benefit by having some inputs even at the school level. And I think in the there is already some attempt. I mean, the detailed qualification framework has not been provided by this education policy, but it is talking about that for school and for higher education, a qualification framework would be developed. For school, it's to be developed by the NCERT. For higher education, it is to be developed by a newly created institutions called General Education Council. And I'm sure that at that time they would apply their mind that at what level it is more appropriate. But there is a possibility that given the fact that up to 12th standard of schooling, children would study a wide variety of subjects. They will not split into art, science, commerce. So there is a possibility that some courses which help people understand and later on apply entrepreneurship in their life would also be part of that curricular framework. Okay, over to you, Seema.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So next question is, would private affiliated colleges be also consolidated who are offering specialized courses only, and will this be acceptable to such colleges?
I don't know about whether it will be acceptable to college or not. But the basic spirit of the national education policy is that there will be no affiliated colleges. They are saying that all higher educational institutions would be classified into three categories. One, research universities, where their primary focus would be to undertake research. Secondary focus would be teaching. These will perhaps be the premier institutions, which will be known for their research and publications. The second set of institutions would be teaching universities, which will primarily focus on teaching and developing human resources needed for the economy. But as a secondary focus, they will be doing some research as well. And third would be the autonomous institutions, which will be the degree awarding institutions. It means the present system of affiliation that college teaches, but the students take examination of the university and gets degree of the university would not exist. This is the scheme of national education policy. How long will it take for the implementation? I think details would be out soon. Higher education is also in the concurrent list. So the state government will also have to play an important role. So they will have to be taken on board. So it seems to be a little complicated issue. But I think it will be good if the universities are free from the affiliation burdens and if the colleges are empowered to award degrees in their own name. As regards specialized courses, I mean, specialization is fine, but narrowing down to only, say, for example, just a teachers training college, so it's a specialized college just focusing on teachers training, that has not found favor with the national education policy. They are saying that all institutions will have to be with a wide range of discipline available on their campus, or they be part of the cluster, or they will have to consolidate or merge into many different institutions merged into one to bring in this multidisciplinarity to seek this advantage. So I think some very highly specialized kind of institute, research institutes, may have some justifications to continue, but in case of undergraduate and postgraduate colleges with specialization, super specialization, perhaps may not be tenable. Okay, over to you, Seema.
Thank you, sir. So continuing with this part, would also know, as you said that there would be three categorizations and affiliations would be required, would go away, and they would want them to take things independently, starting multidisciplinary courses. So there is a question, that is, innovation, will the innovation be allowed to teachers in their teaching learning processes?
I think so, because if you go by the spirit of the policy, and they are saying that all educational institutions will be autonomous with an empowered board, and all decision with regard to courses, with regard to fees structure, with regard to faculty would be taken by the board itself. So I'm very sure that a good institution would in fact respect that, unless they allow and they encourage innovation by teachers in their designing of the course content, in the way they teach courses, the kind of innovation in the curricula that they bring in, so they will not progress. So I'm sure that the teachers would be enabled, encouraged for resorting to innovative practices in their teaching learning processes. One thing I would always say that this debate of the autonomy and the accountability has been an eternal debate. But one thing, if we keep in mind, life becomes easy, that autonomy or freedom does not mean freedom to do whatever you want to do, but autonomy and freedom means freedom to do what you are expected to do. So it means that there would always be some frameworks prescribed for the autonomy. So say, for example, if a teacher wants to come and say that when we don't teach classes, students learn better. There may be an academic reason, but the institution may still want teacher to teach, to take their classes. So, but I'm sure that there would be possibilities of innovation in the teaching learning process, curricula, and pedagogy. Okay, Seema, over to you.
Yes, sir. So next question is how NEP, the new NEP, will be affecting MBA programs?
You see, MBA programs are rather, perhaps you want to ask, uh, let me combine the two programs. How would it affect the PG diploma program and how would it affect MBA program?
Yes.
So MBA programs are offered by institutions, colleges, which are affiliated to universities. MBA programs are also offered by the teaching departments within the university. So as far as the MBA program being offered by the teaching departments within the university, I think there would not be a major impact. They can continue as they are doing, and there would be a possibility for them to further improve quality. As far as the colleges which are affiliated to universities are concerned, once this national education policy is fully operational, then they will have to become autonomous. And in order to become autonomous, they must get themselves accredited with a good score, both the program accreditation and the institutional accreditation. They will have to become multidisciplinary, they will have to increase their size. And those who succeed in these things, they will be allowed to continue as an independent entity and to go on awarding the degrees of MBA. Those who are unable to meet these requirements of a minimum enrollment size, of a minimum number of disciplines that are to be done, or the accreditation score that are needed, will perhaps be required to achieve those goals, targets earliest, till such time they may not be able to operate. So these are the implications for the MBA program. Now for the PGDBM program, presently the postgraduate diploma in management program is offered by institutions which are not affiliated to any university. These are standalone institutions, but these programs require AICTE approval. Now, with the new education policy in place, all institutions are expected to be empowered to award degrees. So they need not then remain confined to only postgraduate diploma. They can shift to MBA degree. Will the PGDBM approval by AICTE continue? The national education policy does not talk about it. Rather, it talks about converting All India Council of Technical Education and other professional bodies into a kind of the standard setting council. So if AICTE is deprived of its power to grant approval to PGDBM program or to engineering programs, so then it will all be based on the accreditation and the standalone methods. So I think these institutions, PGDBM and MBA, offered by colleges and institute, will have to gear themselves, prepare themselves to benefit and also to brace the challenges that this education policy is posing. Over to you, Seema.
Yes, sir. Sir, as you talked about the institutes, both for PGDBM and MBA have to prepare themselves, keeping into consideration the new policy. Would like your opinion in terms of the biggest challenges that the institutes would be facing in adopting this policy.
You see, if you are a single disciplinary management institute, you have a very limited land available with you. In order to become multidisciplinary, you need more infrastructure. Even if you go for a high rise, still you will need your land resources. So I think you have to take a review of whether these resources are available. The second thing, since most of these institutions are running in the self-finance mode, so it sounds easy to say that add more disciplines, but presently most of these institutions have been running only those disciplines which have high demands and people are willing to pay the required fees. Supposing you add disciplines which are otherwise very, very important, relevant, and significant, but people somehow do not see value in getting a degree in those disciplines. So adding those disciplines would entail a cost. So I think it has to be a very careful, calibrated, and deliberate exercise by the institution that which discipline do they want to add in order to remain relevant and in order to broad base and scale up by adding more disciplines. Third thing that would come is the faculty resources. Adding more departments sounds easy, but bringing in more quality teachers, retaining teachers, creating conditions so that these teachers are engaged into effective teaching learning process and some research. These are all challenges, and it will require a very detailed and elaborate exercise by each institutions. Over to you, Seema.
Thank you, sir. We have another two, three questions, and one of them is educational entrepreneurs of our country are all social entrepreneurs, means not for profit, of course. So, how will it be imbibing the startups to think for educational entrepreneurship?
You see, historically in our country, education is a not-for-profit activity. And the national education policy has not changed this. So all the national education policy at several places emphasizes the role and importance of the private higher educational institutions or private initiatives in education as a whole. But it also keeps on reminding that these will have to be institutions which are public spirited. These institutions will have to be run as a charitable organization. These institutions will have to be philanthropic in nature. So that existing situation and scenario of education sector being a not-for-profit sector will continue. And therefore, this whole lexicon of edupreneur or social entrepreneur will be applicable to the education sector only in a limited manner. But at the same time, I must say that in an educational activity, in an educational institution, the core educational activity is only one small part. Around that core educational activities, there are a number of other activities which are non-educational, but they are allied and cognate or relevant or complementary to the educational activities. So like you are running a hostel, like you are various other transport facilities. So in any case, institutions hire these, sometime they create separate verticals, so they will find their own way of balancing between entrepreneurship in education and the charitable and the philanthropy in education. But broad philosophy remains that education is a not for profit activity. Over to you, Seema.
Yes, sir. So my second last question is, how would NEP help in creating research opportunities?
I mean, the way it has emphasized, it sounds good, seems positive, because they are also suggesting establishment of National Research Foundation. Uh, and this National Research Foundation would accumulate funds both from the government and also from the industry and the private sources. And then this fund would be available on competitive basis to all institutions and teachers to finance their research initiative. So, on the face of it, it appears that perhaps there would be fillip to research. In reality, what will happen, it will depend on how much money comes into these funds. Because earlier, the draft National Education Policy of 2019 had mentioned that this National Research Foundation funding would be over and above the existing funding that comes from uh, existing sources. But the present policy seems to be like all funding for research would be pooled into this one. So the research would go up uh, only if there is a freedom to faculty to think of research ideas and they are not constrained. And the second thing is that there is a liberal funding available. If there is a funding constraints, then the research would be constraints. And the funding led conditionalities should be minimal to research. So if there are too many conditionalities, then research would not go up. So it will have to be seen that how is it being conceptualized. Okay, Seema, over to you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So the last question is for teachers, wherein how should teachers adapt and cope up with this coming up change? And how should teachers be ready to sustain themselves in this system?
You see, a good teacher should focus on his discipline and should recognize its role uh, as a facilitator of the learner, should embrace technology, should learn to live with technology, will have to, rather than repeating what is available on net, textbooks, and other things, would like to be creative and promote creativity amongst students. So if that happens, then that teacher would remain useful, would remain relevant, despite all the advancement and despite all the changes, and that is what is expected of the teachers to do. I think, in brief, if I have to say, that the teachers will have to realize that teaching is a full-time profession where you have to give your best. Indeed, it's a very noblest profession, but these days this profession is also subject to performance assessment, performance measurement, and you should realize that today the students who are coming, uh, they have access to a wide variety of sources of information. Though it is very common to hear these days that students are not as focused as we were when we were students. Students do not give their best and so on and so forth. But the fact is, in the ultimate analysis, that we have to challenge students to give their best. And if they start seeing that they are getting something more than what it's already available to them, through a wide variety, the students, if we do that, the student would be more interested. So I think the role of the teacher will have to be transformed. So not only that he does teaching, he becomes a facilitator, he uses technology to improve quality, he also engages in research in his choicest area. Better if it becomes multidisciplinary in some way, by working in a team, by working in a group, and also connecting with the community. So these are all the requirements. So these requirements and such demands is going to increase further on teachers, and teachers will have to be ready and prepared for that. Okay, over to you, Seema.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for being with us, sir, today and answering the questions. The session that you have taken on NEP is enlightening, giving us all depth knowledge about the holistic requirement of the universities, multidisciplinary, what are the transformation and the challenges there for the teacher of today to sustain themselves, to develop the children, the students, and enabling them to be innovative and become good entrepreneurs for future, where they can contribute to the society. So now, on behalf of Geeta Ratan International Business School, I would extend my gratitude towards you for accepting our joining for the session and enlightening all of us today. And thank you so much, sir. And thank you, everyone, all the participants, for joining for the EFDP.
Been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. And
Thank
thank
you,
you
sir.
to your management and to your director. So I'm logging off now.
Yes, sir.